Welcome to the third edition of the Next Einstein Forum Global Gathering. Our theme for this virtual edition is Building Africa's Resilience through Education, Research and Innovation. Against the backdrop of everything the world is dealing with right now, I couldn't think of a more fitting theme. If 2020 has taught us anything, it is that the ones who thrive are those who are ready for change. And the force of change comes in various forms: creating, modeling, testing, experimenting, trying until we find something that works by Africa and for Africa.
For instance, the discovery I made for the Nobel Prize, 1977, long time ago now. Only about 3 years ago, was there a practical application of this in medicine? It's been applied by actually an ex-postdoc of mine to spinal muscular atrophy. And he discovered a cure for the disease because the mechanism that caused the disease was based on my discovery. And so it can sometimes take a long time before basic research can lead to practical consequences. I also think it's very important for scientists to learn to speak to the public in language they can understand. I have something I call the grandmother test, which I always give to students and postdocs who work with me. And I say, go and talk to your grandmother and tell her what it is you do in the lab every day and convince her that you are a wonderful scientist. And get it to a point where not only does she understand it, but she understands it well enough to go and boast about you to all her friends.
So let me ask you for any sort of words of advice you would give to an aspiring young scientist in Africa in particular. And what should they do?
The first thing to do is to find out what it is you're really passionate about. The one thing I would say, and I feel very strongly about this, is if you're really engrossed in doing something, and then you find out about something that is far more interesting, switch and do it.
For a long time, women have been more, socialized towards, sectors like, hospitality, care, sort of a few of the lower paying sectors. And these have been, the hardest hit. They are less flexible, so it's much more difficult for you to work from home. So they're going out to do the care work and the nursing, and they're getting much more exposed. Gender roles aside, deciding as a family who should stop work and maybe stay at home and look after the kids and who should continue working, because you're earning less, it's probably more likely for the women to do that. And you can see how a lot of these things are then interconnected with, with economic gaps, education gaps.
It's all about education. It's all about being in the right environment, having people to support you. But even without support, it's actually possible to do something. It's possible to learn. It's possible to succeed.
You mentioned your older brother, but to what extent did your family and your community in Iran, Kurdistan, did they support and believe in you?
Well, there were some kind of support, you could say. For example, just being in that particular culture was important for me, because even though we didn't have so much things, I mean, in a sense, we were not poor, but we also were not rich. But the thing is that cultures can support people mentally.
And what motivates you? Is it the beauty of nature, or is it the usefulness of your work?
The development of mathematics applied to virtual reality, augmented reality. For a surgeon like me, I have understood less than 20% of the lecture. But I came back and immediately with my co-workers, I said, we need to build an institute totally dedicated to computer science and surgery, because the way of the revolution in surgery will not be coming from surgeons, but from computer scientists. And that is the reason we have created IRCAD in France.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but parents and the mathematical teacher, they always said that I should go to be an engineer, which I did at the end. I am an engineer and I hated it, I must say. I hated it because after all, I realized that I was more interested in trying to find the reason for what things were working. And so I was more and more driven to theoretical physics.
I think a lot of people, though, write their grants and have their milestones, but they probably also have little sideline projects on the side. And if they take off, then of course you can write that for your next grant. But I agree, it's hard to have an off-the-wall idea and get it funded. And so you sort of have to almost do it as a sideline project until it gets some traction. It doesn't stop you from talking to your colleagues and getting all the help that you might need. And without the funding, you can start just getting the idea.
Obviously, when the pandemic started, there was no playbook for us to go by. And how do you manage this kind of portfolio and this kind of risk profile during a pandemic? So the main thing we could do was just keep an eye out for developments in the market, keeping very close contact with all of our clients. We're lucky in the sense that we've invested heavily in the relationships with our clients, so that when it comes to shocks like this, we really benefited from intimately knowing our customers.
In terms of allocations of vaccines, it's a limited resource, and the whole decision-making process of to whom should vaccines go. We can treat this as an optimization problem as well. There are different objectives. We can think about the objective of having people return to society in normalcy. Certain individuals have a higher priority to return to society versus others, or also the priorities in terms of risk factors, as we've seen, for example, here in the UK, where the first vaccines are going to be rolled out to people who are more at risk or to healthcare workers. But at the same time, you can make the case for using vaccines to mitigate the propagation of the virus.
I am a researcher myself, and more focused on implementation science. And I have analyzing the countries around the world, countries who have implemented correctly the evidence-based intervention with the right strategies according to their context, national context and global context, are the ones who have succeeded, meaning minimum of death, minimum of disruption. And those who didn't follow evidence-based intervention failed the implementation.
Since 2016, the government of Rwanda, through the Ministry of Education and NEF, signed a 5-year MOU to formalize the partnership between the two institutions. As part of this partnership, Rwanda hosts the NEF Global Secretariat and one of its largest centers for excellence, serving the whole African continent. In March 2016, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, chaired the launch of the NEF ecosystem of innovation in Rwanda. Rwanda is proud to be part of this 3rd edition of the Next H10 Forum Global Gathering, taking place online after successful hosting the 2nd edition in March 2018 in Kigali, attracting over 1,500 delegates. The Rwandan government acted swiftly to combat the pandemic using science to protect public health. The Ministry of Health in Rwanda has collaborated closely with scientists including Professor Wilfried Ndifon from NEF and Professor Leon Mutesta. Rwanda is investing heavily in the education of its young people, and it is encouraging them to pursue skilled careers in science and innovation, working to serve the public and create jobs and raise living standards.